good over here. If people on the
All right.
if people on the Twitch or YouTubes can tell us what they're seeing and hearing, that would be good to get a backup. Waiting for the short delay. Da-da-da. Yep. Okay, I hear it on my monitor laptop. Welcome, Syed.
That's right. I think in May I moved back to the Visual Studio Web Tools team. Yeah, that's where I was for a long time.
Yep. So it's a homecoming. You're back in the saddle.
Precisely. Yeah, that's right, man.
Cool. Okay. Well, so you're going to be showing us some fun new stuff with like you said, web tooling. So that's awesome. Let's jump in. I've got just out in the description and in the chat if you're watching on YouTube or Twitch. So don't worry, I will send them on over. And so here we go. The first one is there's a new release of BUnit out. This is really cool. BUnit just in general is a cool project that makes it easier to do testing and some kind of more advanced specific testing for Blazor. So, I mean, of course, you can always write your standard unit tests, but this is specific and built, to work well with Blazor. So it's cool. So, for instance, things like working with JS interop and stuff. Also, cool to see, like, there's some cool interaction. Simon Kropp has been working and contributing to some of these unit testing frameworks with interaction, and so that's really cool too. So excellent news, and thanks Ejil, for sending me the link to that. All right, so this is a fun one. Marin sent me this link. This is for Blazor Monaco. So Monaco editor is the editor that powers VS Code. It's a web-based editor, and I've played with it over the years. And one thing is, over time, it's gotten pretty involved to set up and get running. To actually get the JavaScript and to get everything integrated. I've played with this over time, and it was more difficult than I thought. So this is really cool to see this built in a way that can be plugged right in via Blazor. So you get this cool Blazor, and I'll just pop over. He's got a live working demo here, and so it's got IntelliSense, pretty neat stuff. So this is, and you'll see even over on the right, we've got the, I forget what this is called, but it's got the zoom thing where it shows the thumbnail version of the code. You can add values and get values. It's got different theme support. So I'm pretty excited to see this. This is really neat. And if you need to use any kind of integration with a code editor, this seems like a really cool thing to start with. Excellent. So thanks for sending that one over. Okay, so this is kind of neat. This is the ASP.NET team, specifically the Blazor team, did a sprint last week. And this was designed for people to get involved and work on pull requests, and they would work directly with somebody on the team that would help them with it. So I'm starting by linking to the ASP.NET on Twitter. If you're on Twitter and you're not following ASP.NET, what are you doing? You got to follow ASP.NET on Twitter. That's also where we share out community links and things like that. But this is how it was announced. And here's the information for the sprint. So this was their first one. I'm sure they'll be tweaking things over time, but they had a form where you could sign up to join. They had, here's how you can get prepared for it so that people could jump in and be already, ready to go. And then here's the things, pretty well documented, how to submit a pull request. And here are some of the issues that they had available, as well as mentors to help work with them. And it's neat to see then they've got these tagged as community contributions. It's really exciting to see these come in. So I'm looking forward to see more of these in the future. And, follow ASP.NET on Twitter if you're not, and watch for these. So that is really cool. Okay, so Rick shared this, and I thought this is interesting. I actually hadn't seen this before I saw this post. So there's Azure Static Web Apps. So there's there's the Azure Web Apps support, or Azure App Service that's been available for a while. Then there's static website hosting in Azure Storage, and that's where you're just storing static files. And this was, semi recently released, where they added in support for like actually serving files and functioning as a static server. However, there are some things that it does not support. So it is literally like just serving static files. And so this new support for static web apps is kind of an integration of several different things. So integration with better CI/CD, integration with support for Azure Functions. And so the idea is it is still, it's not full-on web server support, but it is a slightly more advanced static web app. So this is something I'm going to need to play with it, but it does look like something where if you have wanted to do something and you need a little bit more support, like support for HTTPS or CORS or something like that, or you want better integration with functions, this seems pretty exciting to take a look at. So, all right, this is just, to check back in on this. A few weeks ago, we had Sebastian Ross on, and he showed a lot of demos with Crank. And Crank's the infrastructure that they use for testing performance and all the benchmarking and all that kind of stuff. So he showed off a lot of examples of it, and it wasn't yet open sourced out on GitHub, and now it is. So you can take a look at this. There's also some really good support in here, and he talked through this during his demos, that you could use this for benchmarking your own applications. And you could set, triggers and all kinds of things where you could observe your applications running in a test benchmark, environment. And so this seems really exciting for that sort of stuff as well. And neat that you can deploy it all, using Docker containers and things like that. So some really kind of lightweight deployment opportunities. All right, David Fowler tweeted about this. So he said, we finally finished designing new network abstractions for .NET 5 and beyond. So this goes out for a ways. And then he says later in the thread that this, the goal is to actually re-platform Bedrock on top of this. And, there's a lot of work that's gone into this. So some neat things in here that it's been designed, and this goes back to a lot of the patterns and things that were kind of, what would you call it, artisanal code in Kestrel. It was very kind of one-off and very kind of learning how to build these high-performance networking things in .NET. And so now this is kind of codified into these abstractions. So this is the published thing out on GitHub, and it's exciting to see this see this out there. So stuff. All right, now we get into web dev features, and we'll probably dig deeper into these when we talk to you, Syed. But here's some of the stuff. So a new post out last week on enabling experimental Razor editor in Visual Studio. So this is a feature where you can go and turn this on in Visual Studio, Windows 16.7, Preview 4, and later. So going into the preview features. I'm a nut for this stuff. I go and turn them all on, but it's cool. And so this is some interesting stuff about the Razor editor and how they've worked to get this set up and integrate with the Razor language server, etc. And I think we're going to try and show some of this when we bring you on, so I'm not going to go deeper than that. And then these are two other links that you sent me, Syed. So here's this WebLive Preview. And so this is a V6 that you can install to take a look to use WebLive Preview in preview. So it's a double preview.
Double preview, dude. That's right. Yeah, and we'll definitely be taking a closer look at those features.
Cool. And then the last one here, this is the sign up form. So this is a private preview where you can sign up for it.
That's for the that second link is for signing up to Visual Studio Codespace's private preview. For WebLive Preview, the only thing that people have to do is just download and install, and then party on it.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, that's all I got. So I'm popping back over to you.
Okay, great. Yeah, let me share my screen here. Give me just 1 second for that.
Okay.
And, I am running some kind of daily builds here. So if we do run into any issues, I'm definitely going to blame it on that. So John already talked about the link for WebLive Preview here for the V6. Let me open up a new browser tab. I'll navigate to that link. Let's go take a look at this. Let's go take a look at this real quick.
You can minimize I'm down in the lower right corner there.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
You can
That's right. That's right. Thank you very much. This is definitely very early stages here. And what I mentioned was, the only thing you need to do is just go ahead and download and install this, and then it will start working. One kind of caveat is this functionality is currently limited to full .NET Framework projects here, where we'll be working with the ASP.NET team to enable it for .NET Core. But right, for now, we're just kind of limited to .NET Framework. And then
what's the reasoning on that? Is that it's most useful in that case?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, great question. So, the way that WebLive Preview kind of came about was to kind of tell you the backstory behind it, right? What happened was there's been a big push to make Visual Studio accessible to all developers. Even in for some cases, users may have either permanent or temporary disabilities. But we want to make our product where everybody can use it, no matter what their situation is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with web forms in particular, we did have a really big problem with accessibility with respect to the web forms designer. So WebLive Preview is our attempt to basically kind of replace the web forms designer, but we also want to not only bring over the web forms designer, but we also want to add a bunch of value to everybody else who maybe you're not even developing web forms, or maybe you are a web forms developer but you don't use the designer. So WebLive Preview is kind of meant for that, and it builds on top of some technology that we created in the past. That's called Browser Link there, and also Page Inspector, really. So for people who remember Browser Link and Page Inspector, WebLive Preview is kind of a combination of those two things currently, but then we're going to kind of beef it up to add a bunch more support there. And I do have some kind of mock-ups that I wanted to show too, if that's interesting for the viewers here.
Sure.
But yeah, why don't we get through the WebLive Preview, and I'll give kind of a demo of what we have, and then we can go through the mockups and whatnot. But I was going to point out that after you download, there's also more information at this link here. Basically, this is a blog post that we put together when we released the WebLive Preview. So there's some more information there in that blog post. All right, so here I have a solution that's loaded. This solution contains a .NET Framework Web Forms project as well as an MVC project. We'll go ahead and explore it through the MVC project, I think. So let me go into Views, and so now we can see that I've got my views here. And actually, you know what? Let me go back. I'm going to create a new. I'm going to create a new MVC project here. Now that I remember, I think there might be an issue with this particular project that I created. So yeah, let me go through and create one MVC project here as well, and we'll go from there. But yeah, like I said, the WebLive Preview is definitely in very early stages here. Just one second here. Okay. Just need to make sure I pick the right one. There we go. Great. So yeah, if you have any problems with it or any issues, definitely do let us know about that, because we want to make sure that we get a nice solid release before we go GA here. But we definitely have a lot of plans to add a bunch more functionality to this as well. And like I said, we're going to get into that. So yeah, while the project is being created, let me just kind of walk the users through it. So the current functionality that we have is you'll right-click on your view and then say View, and you'll say Edit in Browser.
Mm-hmm.
And then what it does is it'll go ahead and launch your browser to that particular page, and then it just adds a query string to the end of the URL, and then that is kind of an indication for Visual Studio to kind of go into the inspect mode, as we call it there. Yeah, but I'll show you how we're planning on streamlining that in the future as well when we get to the mockups portion of this. Okay, so I've got my MVC project created here. Just going to go to the About page here. So what I'll do is I'm going to right-click on this About page. We can see, oops, I think it's still kind of initializing.
Restoring packages.
Yeah, let's give it a second to finish that, and then we'll perform the gesture. Yeah, my machine's been running very kind of slow today. I'm not sure what's going on here. Maybe it's a network issue. I know I was having some network issues previously. Okay.
I think computers can smell here, and they also can tell when you're live on any kind of thing, and they're like, I'm gonna just maybe scan for viruses.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, what's going on here? Okay, this is weird. Okay, let me do it. Maybe I should try on the other project that I've got here. I'm not sure what I've done with this other one. That's okay. I'll drop back into the web forms project that I have here. So we can see I've got edit and browser here. So I'm going to select that, and this should fire up a browser window for me. Hopefully on the same screen that we're looking at. Otherwise, I'll drag it over. Yeah. Okay. All right. So it pops up on the other screen. Let me bring it over here so we can all see it. All right, so yeah, at the end of the URL, it just adds a question mark vs edit equals true here, and what that does is it puts the page into kind of inspect mode here. And what I want to do is I actually want to get my IDE and my web page side by side so we can see better what's happening. Let me close out of everything. All right, great. So now we can see I'm in the about page here. And if I bring my mouse over an element, you can see it's highlighting that element, and then it actually is supposed to be opening the source over here, but my machine is just running terribly slow. I apologize. I'm not sure what's going on with this machine here. Yeah.
There it is.
Okay. Yeah. So exactly. So the idea is that you kind of let's say you're browsing your app here, and then you found some sort of an issue here. Let's say my ASP.NET application, and then you wanted to change that. So it'll take you right to the code here, and then we can just go ahead and start changing that directly. We can see the changes are coming in the browser directly as well. Yeah, so that's kind of the high level of it. But let me show you some kind of additional functionality that we have here. So why don't I take this browser? I'm going to make it smaller here. I want to show you a few things here, some additional features that we have that we haven't really talked too much about here. So yeah, let me make this guy small. Let's make a new tab, a new window, I mean. So okay, that's fine. All right, let me get that same URL here and paste it. So you can imagine, let's say you're developing an app that needs to work on multiple different device sizes here, right? So when I'm using my multiple monitors, I could set up various different browsers here with different sizes, and then we'll see that the refresh gets pushed automatically to all the different browsers. That's really what I'll be showing you here today, or during this demo, I mean. All right, so now let's go and start editing this, and we should see both of these pages kind of lighting up. Okay, this one's not lighting up here. Okay, for some reason. Well, it is in preview, but not sure why this guy's not working good today for some reason. Let me save it again, and then I can it's even telling me that it's up to date, and then it's telling me this one needs update. It's pretty strange. Yeah, we got some funny behavior here, but like I said, I'm running a daily build here. Let's try it one more time. Now let's try to get rid of all the twos. And notice I'm not even saving the file here, right? You can see, it might be hard to see, but there's an asterisk here that the file has not been saved. Let's try one more time. All right, file has not been saved, so we can see that. Okay, great. Now let me show you some additional kind of features that we have here. We also have a CSS auto sync here, basically. And I think this part is pretty cool too. So let's say you're working on your application and you've got the different sizes loaded up in your browsers here, and you just want to kind of play around with your CSS here. Let's set a background color to red here. We can see as I'm kind of typing here, it's automatically getting updated. Let's pick a different color here, purple. So yeah, this is what we call CSS auto sync here. So I think this is really great for when you're developing your CSS, especially when you got a bunch of media queries here. You can have all the browsers with the right sizes set up. The Edge web developer tools and Chrome developer tools, they enable you to open the browser in certain sizes as well. So that's where I think this is really cool, the CSS autosync. It just kind of pushes the changes directly to it.
Yeah,
we talked about we should. Oh, go ahead.
Well, yeah, that is nice, including like the CSS, like because there's more advanced like CSS support in Visual Studio. Like for instance, like I don't know if you're doing any kind of like less or SAS or whatever. Like would that integrate in with that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. Yeah, correct. Great question. So yeah, here I'm just showing just straight up CSS files. But if you were using less or SAS, we've got the source maps for that information. So as you change those less and SAS files, those changes would also be pushed to the browser immediately as well. Yeah, so that's absolutely correct. Yeah, great question there. And a couple other things to kind of point out here. We also have it's kind of like almost like a tag navigator type of thing. So let's say if you wanted to figure out where the footer itself was at, you can select here to go right to that location, or if you wanted to go back to any particular element there, you can use this to navigate to items that you may not be able to see on the screen itself. And then there's also like a little status / button over here. So sometimes this will say needs update or up to date. And then the cases where it says needs update, you can click on this to push an update to all the browsers that are currently connected. All right, so that's the idea there. Should I show some mock-ups that I have for ideas of things that we're working on and what we might do in the future here for WebLive Preview?
Yeah, and while you're at it, I wonder. Right now we're actually getting some like black bars on the side, and I think it might share better if we went. You earlier were trying sharing your other screen. Do you want to try that real quick?
Yeah, sure.
See if the other screen does that. But I mean, it's okay if it doesn't, but worth a shot.
Okay, no problem. Let me know when you can start seeing my screen.
That's better. Yeah, let's go with that.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Let me just pull this guy over here for now, I guess. That's fine. Okay, so yeah, let me go into to slideshow mode here. So in this slideshow is just some kind of ideas that we were kind of working on. We're going to work on some of these things, but some of the other things we may or may not work on these things. So this is not like any type of commitment for what we will be doing here. But instead just showing some ideas of what may happen. But some of these things might never happen. Let me just give a second for the slideshow to start. Can you see the slides pretty good?
Got it.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, yeah. So basically, one thing that I don't like about the current kind of interaction with WebLive Preview is that users have to explicitly go out and click on a view and say edit in browser, right? So what we strive to do is actually try to meet the user where they're at, and people don't have to learn about special gestures and all that sort of stuff, right? So the right click edit in browser is definitely not ideal. So what we would like to try and do is basically come up with a way that we can make this functionality visible as users perform their normal everyday to day activities like Control F5 or F5. So in this case, we see a little kind of animation that I've created here. And the user will first, let me just wait for this to kind of restart, and then I'll talk through it. So we first wait for, so first the user will start without debugging or start with debugging. In the bottom, they'll see a kind of a Visual Studio-like menu here, and it's not going to look just like this. This is just kind of my PM art here. And then they'll use that to kind of enter the inspect mode. And some reasons why this is kind of interesting is, let's say you're just developing your app and you're kind of looking through your website, and you notice some sort of a minor problem, and you just want to fix that right away. So you can just enable inspect mode. It'll bring you right to the code, and then you can go ahead and make your edit and see it live in the browser, and then kind of continue on your way. And then in addition to entering the inspect mode, we also need some sort of a way for people to exit the inspect mode. Mm-hmm. So there'll be some sort of a gesture there in that menu, and obviously with every feature that we create, it's not 100% of the audience that are interested in these features. So we'll need some sort of a way to turn those features on and off. So I mentioned a project property and/or like a tools option to disable that. Here's another thing, and I think this is one of the features that we'll probably be working on sooner rather than later, is just simple text edits in the browser. And this kind of goes on just with kind of enabling developers to be a little bit more productive as they develop their app. So the idea is that when you're browsing your app, you can go into inspect mode and then double click on some text. And then just edit it immediately in the browser, and those changes get pushed back to Visual Studio, and they're pushed back to Visual Studio in a way that you can also kind of you'll still, the undo buffer will still be there, so you'll be able to kind of undo your operations one by one as well, and the chances that that you need to perform some sort of an undo. So yeah, that's a simple text edits in the browser, and like I said, I think we'll probably actually start working on this one pretty soon.
Yeah,
all right.
That's nice. I mean, it's definitely, there's sometimes where I'm in HTML code mode and I'm thinking about HTML, but sometimes when you're editing content on a page, nothing beats being able to just interact directly with it. And a lot of times in the past, I would go into my browser tools, edit in browser tools, and then bring all those changes back over to Visual Studio. So this is really nice productivity-wise.
That's right. So yeah, exactly. And some people, they ask me, they say, hey, well, if the user's got the Visual Studio IDE already opened, and when they select on the text, and if it opens in the IDE, what's the benefit of having the simple text edits in the browser, right? So the benefit is the context. You're viewing your app, and you're not really trying to you're trying to work on your app. You notice a minor problem, you just want to fix it right away without interrupting whatever it is that you are actually trying to do there. So yeah, maybe it only saves 5 or 10 seconds, but you can still focus on what it was that you're actually trying to do, as opposed to, oh, let me forget about what I was trying to do, let me fix this real quick and then come back to it. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of idea is, let's make it so simple that you can just make a quick change, but then kind of continue on with whatever task it was that you were actually trying to perform. Yeah. And then you mentioned you use the browser developer tools there, so that was kind of a good segue for my next slide here. This also kind of goes along with meeting the user where they're at, and also kind of helps discoverability of these features. So we know that using the browser developer tools is already very popular amongst our users. So the idea here was, whenever you right click and inspect, we should just go ahead and open up that source code in Visual Studio itself, in case you wanted to make some changes to the code in addition to whatever you're trying to do in the browser tools there, basically. So this is really just kind of a discoverability type of feature here.
Nice.
So yeah, so we got that going on, and then this is also another idea that I'm kind of that we're kind of currently playing around with, but this one I think needs to be fleshed out a little bit more. But yeah, I'll show you what I have here, and I do have like a mock-up bug in this animation here too. The idea is that you'd be able to edit your CSS source code, and you mentioned the Monaco editor, so that was what I was initially kind of starting off with. Mm-hmm. Was that we would kind of embed the Monaco editor within the browser itself, and then users could edit their CSS files directly. But since then, I've been thinking about this a little bit more and gotten some feedback. I think what we can do is actually, instead of using an editor that's embedded in the browser, what we can do is actually just pop open another Visual Studio editor here directly underneath the browser that's even kind of attached to it. So that's probably more the direction that we'll be going. And I think the benefits of that is you get the same exact experience.
So I'm not following. What is the advantage of using that as opposed to the browser developer tools? Because I can edit my CSS directly there too.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, right, exactly. So the difference is you can play around with your CSS, get it into a state that you want, and then when you close it, those changes will automatically be in Visual Studio for you. So you don't have to worry about, oh, what were the 5 or 6 different styles that I modified in the developer tools, and how do I push those back to Visual Studio? So that would be the idea here.
Okay.
Right. Yep. So that's the idea here. And then also the same kind of comment about the undo buffer. So let's say if you made like 5 or 6 different changes here, you can always go back to Visual Studio to kind of undo your way out of some of those changes if you needed to.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is pretty much that's pretty much the most of what I had. I did have a couple other ones, but they're not quite as kind of fleshed out as these ones are. But I can talk through some of those items here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So it's up to you, but this is stand-up. This is low-key. You can. Part of the idea here. This is early preview of stuff we're thinking about. So that's perfectly perfectly fitting to just kind of throw stuff out there.
Yeah, right. So what I think we'll be doing after getting those kind of features that I mentioned to you, the menu in the browser, and then I'll also the simple text edits in the browser, and probably the inspect integration. After that, I think we're going to start focusing on some web forms functionality there to replace the web forms designer, and then also continue working with the ASP.NET Core team to get support for ASP.NET Core. For this. And so I think what we'll do is probably we're going to work on a way to actually be able to kind of design your app in the browser itself as well. So you can imagine there'll be like a toolbox and a properties pane in the browser itself. So that's kind of the idea of what we got going on there.
And that solves some of the, like you were saying, some of the accessibility and other features there, right? Okay.
That's right. Yeah. So I'm not sure if the viewers are familiar, but the web forms designer is actually very kind of old code, and it's almost impossible for us to make that accessible. But now that we can create this new effort, we'll be able to make that fully accessible. So that's the end goal there for that.
I think some of that's I don't know. There's hazy, cobwebby things I'm sort of remembering, but some of that goes back to the standard like controls-based stuff that was actually like shared or very closely related with Windows controls also that were in like WinForms and stuff. I just remember talking to and hearing from other people before. It's like, yeah, that's extremely old code in the web forms control designer.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and that was actually initially created by I believe the front page team a very long time ago.
Which is funny. And, somebody in the chat was like earlier when you were showing some features, they were saying like, yeah, Jim Scott was saying like, hey, this is just like front page. So
yeah. Yep. All right, so we got that going on, and then I wanted to talk about. I wanted to show some updates to some CSS snippets that we're going to be delivering relatively soon, I guess. Would that be okay to show some of that stuff?
Absolutely, but before we do that, we had a question in Twitch, and the question was, when you save changes, you were showing the CSS editing in the browser. And you showed 2 different things, and one is with the browser tools, and the other was with the kind of pop-up. And they were asking which does that save changes back to Visual Studio. So my understanding from what you were saying was the kind of pop-up overlay would save those changes back to Visual Studio.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But now if I'm connected and I make changes in the browser developer tools in CSS, that would not save changes back to Visual Studio. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
In here.
Okay, it's okay. Yeah, so yeah, that's absolutely correct. Yeah, so the gesture for showing the CSS files in the browser was edit CSS, and then it will pop up an editor there. So those changes would be saved back to Visual Studio. We've been thinking about the integration with the developer tools and pushing the changes from there as well. But I'm really kind of concerned about doing that because it wouldn't be expected, and it's almost kind of like, why did you move my cheese kind of thing? Why did you change the default behavior that I've been using forever? So that is something that I'm interested in, but I just haven't figured out what is the right way to actually surface that functionality in a way that's not going to be frustrating to a lot of users there. I know.
Yeah, I'm kind of remembering with browser link, and then there was like browser sync or something like that, and there was a checkbox you could turn on, and it would sync them back and forth. Personally, now I'm
Right.
maybe an oddball. I really love my browser tools, and so if you're taking votes or whatever,
Yeah, of course.
I would love to be able to say intentionally turn it on, and then go and tweak my CSS in the browser developer tools, get it exactly how I want, including like working with media queries and all that, and have it synchronizing back.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it would be great to hear in the comments from the community on that as well. So yeah, definitely. So yeah, I think we could definitely take a look at adding some sort of a checkbox to push changes back to Visual Studio, and then maybe another idea that I could come up with was, instead of a checkbox, there could be a button that says, "Hey, push changes back to Visual Studio," and then we can show you a diff of the before and the after, or we could show you a summary of the changes that will be applied.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious from the community to let us know which one of those styles they would prefer. Would it just be a checkbox that says sync the changes and all the changes just kind of happen as you make them, or would you rather have a button that says push changes now, and then you get some sort of either a diff or a summary for what's going to happen there? So yeah, I think those are kind of the two approaches that I've been thinking about, but I don't. I didn't have any particular suggestion from either one of those two, so definitely would be interested in hearing from the community on that one. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Yeah.
What about yourself?
In the chat.
What about yourself, John? Which one of those would you prefer? Would you prefer just a checkbox or a switch that says keep pushing changes, or would you rather have a button that says push changes now with a summary type of thing?
I don't have a super strong thing. I guess push changes now. Before I did that, the first thing I would think to do is just, and I know there's an undo buffer, but that would be a time where I would commit my code before I did push changes. So it might be good to be able to do it in batch, tweak everything. Because sometimes, especially with media queries or complex layouts, you're messing around with it for 20 minutes to get it looking just right. Then it's time to push it over. And maybe I don't want to be doing all the back and forth in the meantime. So
yeah, right. Okay, great. Awesome. Okay. Yeah, that's great input, and hopefully we'll hear in the comments for more about that as well.
Yeah, including if you're watching the recorded version of this afterwards, you can go ahead and leave comments there too, and we'll try and take a look at those too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Perfect, man. I was going to show you some updates to some CSS media queries that we have made here. I was gonna fire up an older version of the Visual Studio so we can do like a side by side. We compare what we had before versus what we will have soon. So yeah, these media query updates that I'll be showing are not available quite yet for users. So yeah, this other version of Visual Studio is just the it's the kind of the retail version of it. It's the same one that users would be downloading. Let me bring that back over to this second screen that I'm sharing here. Let me open this one side by side. All right, so where is this guy? There we go. All right, so this guy's firing up as well. Okay. All right. Let me show you the new ones that we have here. That one's not behaving well. I think maybe I have too many instances of something running right now. All right. So. Actually, here it's popping up. So yeah. Let me talk about the kind of issues that we had with the CSS media queries in the past here, as I'm trying to get this back onto the correct screen. Anyways, it doesn't doesn't want to come on the correct screen for some reason. So some of the issues that we had were the media queries were actually kind of they were targeting old devices like iPhone 4, iPhone 5, those types of things. So what we decided was, it's too difficult to try to keep up with the devices, with specific devices here. Not only from a CSS snippets perspective, but also I think, from a web developer perspective. I think in the past, I think, a few years ago, people were trying to target specific devices with their media queries, but not so much. Sorry, not so much anymore. I think what more users are doing is actually just defining certain breakpoints in their CSS now.
Yeah.
And then just using those, because there's a plethora of devices that's out there, and every day or every week there's new devices that are kind of getting rolled out. So it's not possible really to create a website that supports different devices, but instead it's easier to just try to figure out what sizes that you're trying to support here.
Yeah. This is bringing back memories too of and I know with both MVC and web forms, before even .NET Core, we had device specific views and all that kind of stuff. And totally agree. It was back in the day, it was like, hey, I feel like we were then kind of new to supporting devices. And after a while, it's like, man, I'm too I got better things to do than chase down every individual device, and try and
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yep. So here on the right side, I have the kind of the existing snippet experience. So we can see that we've got iPad and iPhone 4, and then there's like an iPhone 5. And then we can also see that for let's take this iPhone one for example, right? I got iPhone 5, which is going to give me the kind of base media query, and then I have a separate one for landscape, and then yet a separate one for portrait here. And then, in addition, I can't really see the full list. I have to scroll this list to figure out if it's got the device or the size that I'm looking for here.
Right.
So what we've decided to do is really just try to, actually, you know what? Let me go ahead and invoke one of these guys so that way I can show you the result here. So let's do iPhone 4. And then I'm also going to do the the tablet version of that as well, or the landscape, I mean. So that was iPhone, landscape, 2 tabs. Let's get rid of this guy. So now I will point out some additional issues that we discovered along this process. So not only do we have old devices here.
Can you zoom in a bit on that? It's a little bit, the text size is a little bit small.
Sure, no problem.
Yep, cool.
Better?
Yep.
Okay, great. So yeah, one kind of so not only were the devices old, the list was getting pretty long. We had 3 entries per device, but we're also using things that are no longer best practice from a CSS perspective, right? So you can see here that we're using min device width, and then also max device width here. So over the past couple of years, the device width CSS is no longer the recommended approach here. Instead, you should just use min width, max width, and not device width here. So that was another thing that we wanted to go ahead and solve here. So now let me show you what we will have.
That makes sense because I don't care what your device width is. I just need to know the width of the browser itself, right? That tells me.
Right. That's right. And then also the MDN and W3C, they're recommending to stay away from device width from now on. So that's another reason why we're getting rid of this.
Yeah.
Okay, so on the left side of my screen, you can see the kind of new experience. You can see it's much simpler. We just have 4 media queries here. The media one is just kind of a very basic media query here, not for any kind of particular device or anything. It just creates you a kind of a basic media query. And then let's say if I was trying to target, let's say a phone here, because that's the example that we used on the right side. I can go into phone here and do tab, and then we can see that I get all my I get those 3 media queries generated automatically. The base one, the landscape one, and the portrait one.
Wait,
So let's say,
I missed. What was the snippet? What was the gesture to invoke that, or what was the snippet short?
oh, sure. Yeah, right. So it's at media, just like you normally would type it, and then you go down to the one that you want, and then you hit tab.
Okay.
Just like any other snippet.
Media phone.
Then we can see now it's got my max width selected here. So let's say if I needed to change that, let's say 1,000. And if I tab, I'll get to back to, oh, maybe I have a bug here actually. You know what? Okay, so yeah, I got a bug here. So when I created the snippet, I had this one for max width, but then I got it mapped to min width over here. So obviously that's a bug on my part. But yeah,
I
let me
get the
change
idea.
this guy.
You could very quickly you change max width and then change min width, and you can just tab between.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll have to go through and fix that in the snippet here. But yeah, that's the idea. You would just specify your min width and your max width once, and then it'll be applied to all those different areas. That's right. Yep.
Yeah, and it's always cool to show stuff off. In the chat, somebody said I never knew about that tab, and it's not super obvious, but the snippet feature is really useful, including like as you're writing C# code, if you do like CTOR tab or prop tab, and what's nice with it's great that it like the tab. Once you do tab, then you can tab to move between the fields, and it'll update all of them. So like there, you've got max width repeated multiple times. So you update it one time, it'll update all of them.
That's right.
Really useful.
Let's do it one more time for the viewers here. So yeah, we'll do dash media. Go down to the one that we want. Let's try the tablet one this time. Tab to invoke the snippet. We can see now I'm on max width, but this has the same bug as the previous one. But we'll see these 3768 change here. So we'll see 1200 px, and then if I hit enter here, actually I should have hit tab to go to the next one, but that's fine. But yeah, we can see that it was applied to all those areas where that number was applied.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the idea. And then kind of like what you mentioned, this is not specific to CSS, but also C# files have a lot of snippets, and it's also relatively easy to create your own snippets and have those as well.
And there's a good amount of built-in snippets for C#, HTML has them also, and then CSS like you're showing here. And there's some, you're showing some upcoming changes, but there's a lot of other CSS snippets that are already built in already, right? So
there's a good amount of them. I wouldn't say there's like an exhaustive list of snippets here, but yeah, there's a good amount of snippets that we have. And this is also an area that I'll probably be going to take a look at all the existing CSS snippets that we have to make sure that they're all up to date with the current recommended best practices.
Yeah.
And then after we get through that, then I'll be looking to add some additional snippets as well. So yeah, for any of the viewers, if they have ideas for snippets, definitely send them my way, either in the comments or on Twitter or wherever, basically, right? You can also do help provide a suggestion in Visual Studio to send those suggestions to us as well. So that's really great. Okay, so now I think you wanted to try out the experimental razor editing features, right, John? Should we go ahead and try that real quick?
Absolutely.
Okay, great, awesome. Okay, let me close out of this one because that was my RTM version of Visual Studio. We'll stay in here, so let me make that one bigger. I think I have another instance of Visual Studio here. I want to kill my other instance to free up some performance. Okay. All right, so to use the experimental Razor editor, and this is, definitely very, very early. I think they've only gotten it working like just like a few short weeks ago, really. So we may definitely run into some issues here. Normally, whenever I go into options, I always use the search here. So search for preview, go down to preview features here, and there's some different preview features here that you can enable. The one that we're interested in is this one here. Enable experimental Razor editor requires restart. So I'll go ahead and enable that one. Then I'm going to close my Visual Studio and reopen it. Let me save everything.
While you're doing that, somebody said in the chat they're interested in Emmitt support for HTML.
Yeah, right. I think there's an extension out there for that, but that's definitely something that's on my radar as well. That's definitely something that's on my radar as well, but I think it might be a while before we get to that because we're doing some other kind of.
I remember too the way that they refactored. I forget the previous name for Emmitt, but the
Zen coding, I think.
Yeah, and then so there were some more recent changes in it that made it more difficult to support. I think it was a lot more kind of complex and very node focused.
Oh, I see.
I don't know.
It's interesting. Okay, yeah. So I'm not familiar with the latest kind of updates there, but yeah, that's definitely something that I've heard before. So I think it's kind of challenging right now because we're kind of a good portion of the team is working on support for Visual Studio code spaces, and then we're making a lot of updates to the editors right now for that. So that's really kind of where we're focused on. After we get through that, then I think we'll be able to take another look at kind of real enhancements to the web editors. Yeah, but for the time being, we're just kind of focused on lighting it up for code spaces and bringing it to par with the existing local development experience.
Cool.
But then after that, we can take a look at features like Emmitt and other things here. Yeah. And the idea behind this Razor language server here is so let me kind of explain how it would work in the past and what's different about this, right? So in the past, we had two different teams involved here. We had the ASP.NET Runtime team, and then we had the Visual Studio tooling team, right? And the editor portion was really owned by the Visual Studio web tooling team. And this would kind of slow us down a little bit because the ASP.NET team would implement some sort of a new feature, and then they'd want support in Visual Studio, and then they'd have to come and talk to us, and then we'd have to schedule that, and then implement that, right? So with this new Razor approach here, the editor is actually being implemented in a new way. It's being implemented with something that we call LSP, but and I think that's like language server protocol. I think that's what that stands for.
Yep.
But the idea is that the way that let me explain how Visual Studio Code works for IntelliSense, right? So Visual Studio Code, when you're running like a C# project or an ASP.NET Core project, what happens is OmniSharp will be fired up in the background, and OmniSharp will start a web server locally on that machine, and then Visual Studio Code will communicate to that web server for completions and other types of information. So now with this new Razor language server, it's using that same exact model of the LSP model, as they call it, right? And then we'll be able to, the ASP.NET team will be able to embed this editor not only into Visual Studio, but also into Visual Studio. Not only into Visual Studio, but also into Visual Studio Code. And it would also be feasible to plug these into Visual Studio. Let's say for code spaces, when you're editing through a browser, you'd be able to embed these editors and those browser types of scenarios as well. So yeah, that's kind of the idea here. And let's take a look at the editing experience here. And like I said before, this is very, very kind of early preview here. Some things may or may not work here. So we can see that I've got my my normal IntelliSense happening here. But some things, see, so it's a little bit slower than, but obviously we'll be working on the performance of this as well. Let me take a look at, I don't have too much stuff in this. This is just a regular kind of dummy project that I just created here. So there's not really a whole lot here. But yeah, let's take a look at editing some C# here as well. Let me go back here and say, see if it will pop up. Yeah, okay, so that's not really gonna work out for me, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
But yeah, this is definitely very early stages here. But we're gonna keep working on this, and then I think what we'll see is you'll get the same experience in Visual Studio as we'll try to make it to be as close as possible to what we have today, and then also there'll be some additional kind of goodness in this editor that we don't have. But then, in addition to that, this will also be shared with Visual Studio Code, and then also I believe it will be used when editing code in the browser for code spaces here. And then what's going to be really cool about this is, let's say when the ASP.NET team adds some sort of feature to this language server, then that feature will light up in all these 3 different places, like what we mentioned. But
cool.
with that being said, Visual Studio 2019, we will actually be building on top of this editor for some particular things. Like let's say the CSS color picker, those types of things, and then completions for local resources. Like let's say if you have an IMG tag and you do SRC, it will provide you those completions. So basically we'll take the experience that's provided directly out of the box from this editor, and then actually add a layer of additional kind of productivity features on top of it inside Visual Studio itself. That's the idea here, yeah.
Cool. So that moves summarizing what I'm hearing here, but that moves the IDE specific coding out, and it really just kind of says, hey, I support language server protocol, and then now you can implement that in whatever, but like, in .NET Core or whatever kinds of thing, you can separate that out, and then anything that speaks that language server protocol can provide those features and the completions and stuff.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Exactly, dude.
Nice.
So yeah, that's pretty much the idea here, and these are the kind of things that the team is really kind of working on right now. So we're taking the CSS editor, and we're going to do an LSP for that, and the JSON editor, we'll do an LSP for that one as well, and then eventually just share these editors across all the different IDEs and editors that we own. Yeah, that's the idea here.
Nice.
And that's what I kind of meant by we're kind of tied up right now for adding new editor features, because we're kind of going on this LSP effort. But after we get through the LSP effort, I think it'll be a lot easier for us to add features to the editors themselves. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Nice. Wow, that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Before you were like, I just have a few demos, and I was like, well, all right, but you got a full hour here out of this. This is some good new things. So, wow.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned several ways for people to keep up. I mean, there's the blog, the ASP.NET blog. There's which, like for instance, that's where the announcement was of the preview, Razor support, and then there's the ASP.NET on Twitter. I guess, and then also, like, of course, you on Twitter, and people can reach out to you anywhere else. People should be looking to keep up with these changes.
I think for getting notified of changes, I think you kind of mentioned all of them there. So yeah, on Twitter, there's not only people like yourself and me. There's also a Visual Studio account, and there's also an ASP.NET account. So those are good things to follow, I believe, for kind of being alerted about new features. With respect to giving feedback, we have a lot of avenues for feedback, and Twitter is obviously one of them. So if people prefer to send feedback over Twitter, we're definitely happy to engage there. Also, another kind of avenue is the built-in support that we have in Visual Studio itself. So you can go to help You can go to help and then send feedback. And here you can either do report a problem or suggest a feature.
Yeah. I always
And
tell this, I tell people that also for Visual Studio for Mac, like, hey, you can send me something on Twitter or whatever, but if you do it within the IDE, that tells us, like, especially if you do report a problem, it'll tell us like what version you're running, and it gives some more debugging context for us so we can help.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Yeah, exactly. So I think whenever somebody runs into a problem or a bug, right? I think the best thing to do is go to help report a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then on Windows, what this will do is it will actually pop open a browser. And then you'll go ahead and fill in your information there. But it actually will have, so this browser tab is actually connected back to my Visual Studio, and it'll actually gather the log files and those sorts of things, and go from there. So yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Nice. Wow. Okay. Lots of great stuff. Yeah. Thanks a bunch.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
Okay. So we now have, I don't know if you've seen this recently, we have re-implemented the dramatic zoom out feature. So I'm going to have to caution you to, get in a, like brace yourself, because you're actually going to be flown back into the infinite depths of space. So are you ready?
I'm ready, John.
Okay, here we go.
Whoa!
And that's it. Thanks, folks. We'll catch you next week.